The screen opens on a luxurious airplane cabin, sunlight streaming through the windows. A sleek leather seat awaits, but tension hangs thick in the air. Imagine boarding a plane, ready for a long flight, expecting comfort and dignity, only to be told you don't belong. That was the moment David Cole faced the subtle, silent prejudice that had haunted him for years. David Cole was no ordinary man. At 42, he was the founder and CEO of a multinational tech and logistics empire, a company employing over 15,000 people worldwide. His sharp suits and calm, authoritative demeanor made him appear untouchable, but there was more to David than wealth. He carried a quiet, unshakable understanding of justice. On this humid Tuesday morning, David boarded a flight from New York to Dubai. A critical merger awaited him, a deal that could reshape entire industries. His assistant had secured him a first-class seat, as per his ticket. Yet when he approached the row, a young flight attendant's eyes flicked over his boarding pass, then him, and with a curt shake of her head, she said, "I think you're in the wrong section, sir. First class is reserved." David's eyebrow lifted. "Seat 2A, he said, calm, composed. Her smirk didn't hide her assumption. Behind him, an older white man looked on, and the flight attendant whispered, "You'd be more comfortable in business class." Whispers rippled across the cabin, eyes darted away. Some passengers watched, some ignored, but David remained silent, because David Cole knew something they didn't. His company owned a controlling share in this very airline, and the merger he was about to oversee, it would cement his control over the fleet itself. He stepped back, allowing the older man to pass. The humiliation stung, but he had patience. He knew justice didn't always roar immediately. Sometimes, it waited, quietly, for the perfect moment. Pause. The camera lingers on David's calm face, the tension in the cabin palpable. 12 minutes later, as engines hummed in anticipation of takeoff, David made a discreet phone call. His voice was low, measured, unshakable. Within moments, confusion erupted. The plane was grounded. Cabin lights flickered. Passengers murmured in panic. David rose, commanding absolute silence. "You may have thought I was beneath this seat," he said evenly, "but today, you'll learn respect isn't optional when justice is in the room." Before stunned passengers, the pilot was removed, and the airline would later issue a global apology. But this story isn't just about revenge, it's about power, precision, and the rare moments when the scales of justice tip decisively. I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story just for you. If you appreciate stories of justice and power, please subscribe so I can keep creating them for you. The flight had only just begun, but tension in the cabin was already a living thing. Imagine the humiliation, eyes scanning, whispers trailing behind you. David felt the old sting, prejudice disguised as protocol, assumptions made about his worth. He remembered the countless meetings, the nights spent in a cramped garage, the first laptops sold from tables too small to hold his ambition. Yet here he was, dismissed by someone who had no idea of the battles fought, the empires built. The flight attendant, oblivious to the irony, repeated her line to the cabin manager, as if she had the authority to rewrite reality. "Sir, you're in the wrong section," she insisted. David remained calm. A small smile hinted at the storm beneath. His mind worked like a finely tuned engine, calculating every possible move, every possible reaction. He didn't need to argue. He had patience, and patience in his world was the deadliest form of power. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some were embarrassed, some were curious. The cabin became a microcosm of society, judgment, bias, and assumptions playing out in real time. But here's the thing about injustice. It's never about the moment itself, it's about what comes next. By now, David's phone call was being processed in the airline's control center. Within minutes, protocols were reversed, engines powered down, announcements crackled over the intercom. Chaos began to take form, subtle yet undeniable. Passengers looked around, some confused, others frightened. The crew tried to regain control, but the rules had changed, swiftly, decisively. David's gaze swept the cabin, calm, steady, unyielding. This wasn't about revenge, it was about a message. Underestimating someone based on assumptions about age, race, or appearance was a mistake few could afford. Pause for cinematic beat. Chaos had escalated. Passengers' murmurs swelled into outright panic. The cabin lights flickered. Phones lit up with confused messages. The flight attendant who had refused David his seat now looked as if she were trying to vanish into the fabric of the plane itself. Her smirk had vanished, replaced with fear. The captain received the message, "Step out of the cockpit." Confusion turned to shock. The crew scrambled to understand the order, but the authority behind it was unassailable. David stood, his presence commanding attention. Every eye in the cabin was on him. He spoke evenly, his words cutting through fear like a blade. "You may have assumed I was beneath you. Today, you will learn that respect is not optional." Whispers erupted into murmurs of awe. Some passengers gasped, others silently admired the composure, the control. The incident that had begun as humiliation was transforming into a spectacle of justice, power, and precision. What David did next shocked everyone. A quiet call, a single sentence spoken into the phone, and the pilot, once untouchable, was dismissed on the spot. Passengers stared, some afraid to blink. The reality settled. This was no ordinary man. This was someone who understood power at its deepest level. Pause for effect. The cabin became a theater of human emotion, embarrassment, awe, fear, and revelation mingling in real time. David Cole was no longer just a passenger, he was the embodiment of calculated justice. The truth finally surfaced, rippling through the cabin like a tidal wave. David's quiet authority had overturned the assumptions of an entire crew. Passengers realized that the very airline they trusted was partially owned by the man they had dismissed. Their whispers became murmurs of astonishment. The flight attendant's eyes widened. The embarrassment was immediate, visceral. The pilot's confusion gave way to resignation. The stakes had shifted irreversibly. David spoke again, slower this time, letting each word resonate. "You may have thought ignorance was power, and bias was safety. Today, you learned that the true power lies in understanding, precision, and respect." Passengers began to understand. This was a lesson far beyond a simple seating error. It was a lesson about society, prejudice, and the consequences of underestimating someone based on appearance. Pause. The power shift was complete. David had not just corrected an injustice, he had illuminated the mechanics of bias and the silent strength of controlled authority. By now, the tension had reached its zenith. Passengers watched the unfolding drama like a thriller, hearts racing. The pilot, removed from the cockpit, was escorted quietly, his authority stripped within minutes. David remained calm, almost serene. Every action, every decision, was deliberate. The crew could barely breathe under the weight of his presence. The airline's control center issued apologies. Senior management scrambled to contain the fallout, but the spectacle had already made its mark. Imagine the power of someone who doesn't rush to anger but uses patience, intelligence, and authority to execute a flawless plan. That was David Cole. The climax was both swift and stunning. A single phone call, a quiet command, and the rules of the cabin, and society, in a microcosm, had shifted. Justice had been served, not through chaos, but through precision, patience, and the unwavering understanding of power. If you were the judge in this case, what verdict would you deliver? The plane was now calm, but the lessons lingered in every corner. Passengers processed the events in silence, awestruck by the display of authority and justice. The flight attendant, once confident, now understood the consequences of assumptions. The pilot had faced immediate accountability. The airline had issued apologies worldwide. David returned to his seat, composed as ever. The humiliation he had endured was now reversed, transformed into a moment of clarity for everyone involved. It wasn't about revenge, it was about respect, fairness, and the precise exercise of power. The human cost was minimal, yet the societal impact was profound. Passengers would remember this flight forever, not for discomfort, but for witnessing justice delivered with calm precision. Months later, the story of that flight circulated worldwide. David Cole's quiet but decisive action became a case study in leadership, justice, and the power of controlled authority. The airline instituted new training programs. The crew involved learned lessons they could not unlearn. Passengers shared the story online, capturing the world's attention. David moved on to the merger, a victory that further solidified his influence. Yet the true lesson lingered. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it waits quietly, and strikes with precision. Pause. Stories like this take weeks of research, writing, and editing. If you want to see more untold stories of justice and power, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to me. Remember, power isn't just about wealth, justice isn't just about righting wrongs, and respect is never optional. What would you have done if you were in David's shoes? Share your thoughts and let's discuss justice, power, and respect in the comments.